Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson today. We're listening to Remnant of Blaine. This is the new detectives.
Beneath the gaze of California's Sierra Nevada mountains lies the resort community of Lake Tahoe. Clean air and majestic forests instill a sense of harmony. But for one lost traveler, this was the cruelest place on earth. On September 17, 1987, investigators from the El Dorado County Sheriff's Department were called to an isolated spot off the side of an abandoned service road. The young woman had been gagged with a strap of pantyhose. Investigators found what they believed to be the murder weapon, a strangulation device made from a tree branch and a shred of the victim's clothing that appeared cut with scissors. Unlike a rope or bare hands, a garrote is primarily used for torture. The killer went to a good deal of trouble to find a place to stage his lengthy assault. Sergeant Jim Watson was surprised to find a body in such a remote spot.
And at that point, it was just a big question mark in my mind. How did she get here? Where did she come from? A lot of unanswered questions at that point. But it was where we started.
What they did know was that the killer must have picked this location ahead of time. The remote service road was hard to find, not a place one simply stumbled upon. And it wasn't chosen merely as a place to dump a body. The path was too steep for carrying the victim. The absence of injury to the soles of her feet told detectives that her shoes weren't removed until she was walked down here. Working outward in a spiral pattern, they scoured the ground for additional clues.
We began a sweep of the entire area from here up to the highway, which is about a third of a mile. That sweep revealed pieces of clothing that were scattered on various bushes and trees from here up to the main highway.
Technicians collected what they believed to be the remains of the victim's outfit: a dress, a pair of underwear, a single shoe, and pantyhose remnants. Not knowing what might be of use later, they also collected a pack of cigarettes and a butane lighter. Some white cord found nearby suggested that the killer restrained his victim before he killed her. Detectives had no clue to the victim's identity, nor any solid leads on her killer. They hoped the medical examiner would give them something they could use. The post-mortem examination placed her between the ages of 16 and 21. She had a large contusion on her head, but that wasn't the fatal injury. The ligature around her neck had ended her life. Based on the amount of decay, the medical examiner estimated that she had died 2 to 4 weeks earlier. No tissue was found under her fingernails. No foreign fluids were found on her body. Technicians used sticky tape to pick up trace fibers from textiles. They processed every square inch of the victim's clothing and cataloged each shred in the hopes that one day they'd find a source of comparison. But without a suspect, this trace evidence was useless. And until they could identify the victim, the murder investigation was at a standstill. A sadistic predator was free to roam and to kill again. Detectives scoured hundreds of missing persons records, but to no avail. The papers published an artist's rendering of the dead woman. Tips poured in from families and friends searching for missing teenage girls. One by one, each was eliminated. There was nothing to do but wait. As months passed, the missing persons search gradually spread up the coast. It wasn't until 4 months later, in January 1988, that police got a call from a Seattle woman who recognized the girl. Dental records finally gave the victim a name. 17-year-old Darcy Frackenpole was a runaway from Seattle and tried to build a life in Sacramento. She ended up working as a prostitute. Friends last saw her on August 24th, 3 weeks before her body was found. For a predator looking to kill, prostitutes make easy targets. Night after night, they let strangers drive them into the darkness. Sometimes they don't come back. Investigators looked for similar attacks on prostitutes in the Sacramento area. One caught their attention. 3 days before Darcy's body was found, another prostitute had a brutal run-in with a customer. While leaning over to lock the door, the man grabbed her wrists and attempted to handcuff her. But before he managed to subdue her, a police officer cruising in the neighborhood noticed the struggling couple and interceded. After the prostitute escaped from the car, the perpetrator tried to bolt, but he was caught. One good look at a bag found on his back seat told police that the prostitute had gotten away just in time. It contained a pair of scissors, handcuffs, and a garrote assembled from 2 wooden dowels and a length of white cord. It seemed to be some sort of crime kit. Police arrested the suspect, 48-year-old Roger Kibbe. A furniture maker by trade, Kibbe had a burglary record that spanned 2 decades. Illiterate but intelligent, acquaintances described him as a quiet man who liked to take long drives at night. He was given an 8-month sentence for assaulting the prostitute. While he was in prison, Darcy Frackenpole had been identified in Lake Tahoe, over 80 miles away, and the hunt was on for her killer. Kibbe's attack on the prostitute in Sacramento and his crime kit gave investigators the haunting suspicion that this wasn't his first strike. They didn't know how many women had made the mistake of climbing into Kibbe's passenger seat. They wondered if Frackenpole was one of them. A garrote is an unusual and memorable weapon. Though the one found in Kibbe's crime kit didn't resemble the makeshift device used to kill Frackenpole, the white cord used in its construction resembled the rope found at her murder scene. And like his assault victim in Sacramento, Frackenpole was a prostitute. Investigators questioned him, hoping that he would incriminate himself in the Frackenpole murder. He denied any involvement. Detective suspicions were purely circumstantial. The only thing they had to go on was the nylon cord. It deserved a closer look. Under the magnification of a stereo microscope, Technicians compared the cord samples from both Frackenpole's murder scene and Kibbe's car. Both strands contained the same number of fibers, made up of the same weave and pattern. Investigators discovered that this wasn't just household rope. It was parachute cord. They learned that Kibbe worked at a storage facility and rented a unit there. They obtained a warrant to search it.
Oh yeah, right there. It's a skydiving certificate for Roger.
They learned that he enjoyed skydiving, and when they removed a photograph from the wall, they made an unexpected discovery. The picture was hanging from a length of parachute cord, exactly like that found at both crime scenes. But it was hardly a smoking gun. Investigators found nothing to definitively link Kibbe to the death of Darcy Frackenpole. This relatively common rope would not support the weight of a murder investigation. Unless they found more evidence, Kibbe would be out of prison in just a few months, and then would probably disappear. But tiny fibers might prove stronger than sturdy cord. Now that investigators had a suspect, they could compare the trace evidence originally collected from Frackenpole's clothing to fibers collected from Kibbe.
There are many serial type crimes that we don't have blood analysis or DNA analysis. And if there's not bullets or blood or semen, we have no other option other than to look at the particulate or the trace evidence.
At the California Department of Justice Crime Lab, criminalist Faye Springer scrutinized the numerous fiber lifts taken from Darcy Frackenpole's clothing. Hours can be spent analyzing 1 square inch. After 3 weeks poring over the evidence, Springer found 2 fibers that stood out because of their larger size. The distinct shape and color of the fiber's cross-section told her that they were fibers from a blue nylon carpet. Here's where her 30 years' experience paid off. She asked investigators to find out what kind of car Kibbe had been driving at the time of the assault. A search warrant was executed, and the suspect's car was taken in for inspection. Springer was on target. The floor mats were blue. What's more, one had a red stain on it. A sample was collected and sent for testing. The results were disappointing. It turned out to be pink. But the blue fibers from Kibbe's car still had forensic value. A sample was compared with the fibers found on the victim's clothing. Not only were the shape and composition of the strands the same, a spectral dye analysis confirmed that they were exactly the same color. Was this proof that Darcy Frackenpole was in Kibbe's vehicle? Not quite. The same blue carpeting could be found in tens of thousands of vehicles. If investigators were going to catch Kibbe, they need something more conclusive. But one strange similarity couldn't be accounted for. Both the fibers from the car and the ones from the victim's clothing were peppered with tiny football-shaped specks. Samples of both were sent to a lab in Chicago that specializes in identifying microscopic contaminants. Until the results came back, investigators had no other evidence beside the parachute cord. As they began their careful scrutiny for something they might have overlooked, they realized that Kibbe might have left behind just enough rope to hang himself. In California, criminalist Faye Springer was trying to use 3 lengths of rope to lasso a killer. She examined the ropes under higher and higher magnification until she noticed something strange. The rope found at the Darcy Frackenpole murder scene had tiny red paint flecks in it. So did the cord from the garrote found in Roger Kibbe's car. So did the sample from his storage unit. Spectral analysis showed that the paint on the 3 cords had the same chemical composition, including some microscopic black specks that must have gotten trapped beneath the drying paint. It was a powerful connection.
So it looked like not only did we have the same kind of cordage, but we had cordage that lived or existed in the same environment, was exposed to the same kind of contaminants.
For all intents and purposes, it was the same rope. But investigators needed more to tie up their case. That's when the call came from the testing lab in Chicago. They had finished analyzing the carpet fibers. The unidentified football shapes found on the carpet fibers were fungal spores, single-celled organisms that could have come from dirt or mold. But there was something else. The lab's powerful microscopes had identified a red spot on the carpet fiber found on the victim's clothes. It was paint. It had the same properties as the paint on the floor mat of Kibby's car. The carpet fibers weren't just similar, they were identical. Both contained the same football-shaped fungal spores and the same paint stains. The victim and suspect had now been irrefutably linked.
What about the other one there?
Roger Kibby was arrested on April 25, 1988, for the murder of Darcy Frackenpole. By trial time, police had pieced together the details of the victim's last night. She had been working the streets when she accepted an invitation that would turn out to be a date with death. Investigators suspect that after restraining her with a parachute cord, Kibby brought her to a place he'd selected in advance. After cutting up her clothing and torturing her for several hours, he killed her, then scattered her clothes. Roger Kibby was found guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. No one knows how many other victims met a fate similar to Darcy Frackenpole's. At least 3 other murders matching Roger Kibby's M.O. are thought to be his work. Had it not been for a powerful microscope and some shrewd detective work, the number might still be rising. Roger Kibby had covered his tracks by heading out in search of strangers. But not all predators hunt far from home. On a brisk October morning in 1992, neighbors saw Laura Hoteling leave the Bethesda, Maryland home that she shared with her mother. The 24-year-old Harvard graduate moved back after college and had no trouble finding a job at a consulting firm. But on this day, she never made it to work. A close friend and colleague went to check on her. Though the back door was open, she found the house empty.
Someone didn't come to work today.
There was no sign of Laura, nor any hint about where she'd gone. She contacted Laura's family, concerned that there was some sort of emergency. They were as puzzled as her friend. Laura's mother cut her business trip short. Neither she nor her son had any idea where Laura could be. She was not the type to run off without leaving word. Serious about her career, Laura was known for her diligence and punctuality. No burdensome secret seemed to be weighing on her mind. She didn't hint about leaving town. Her family filed a missing persons report with the Montgomery County Police. At this point, all Detective Ed Tarney could do was a routine check.
We checked with the friends. They had not heard from her. She did not leave a note. It was just very suspicious. We also, through the course of the investigation, we checked all her credit cards, bank accounts. There had been no activity.
But as missing persons cases go, this was in its infancy. It had only been a few days since Laura Hoteling was last seen. Though there had been no sign of her, there hadn't been any indication of foul play either. Police interviewed the Hoteling's friends, their neighbors, their gardener. No one could offer any information regarding the woman's disappearance. After seeing her leave for work the previous morning, there had been no sign of Laura, nor any indication of trouble at her house. But then, as they searched the woods around the house, investigators found something that told them this was more than a missing persons case. The pillowcase and pillow inside it were stained with what appeared to be blood.
When we took the bloody pillowcase back to the house, it matched up with the other pillowcases that were there. And at that time, we knew we had something very, very serious.
To find out more about the stains, investigators turned to forensic scientist Susan Ballou at the Montgomery County Crime Lab.
I'll take the pillowcase off the pillow.
Okay.
Ballou first tested the stains to confirm that they were made by human blood.
We wanted to see if we could pick up a type consistent with Laura. We knew from her donations to the Red Cross facility that she was a type A blood.
The blood stain from the pillow was shown to be of the same type. From its bright red color, Ballou knew that she was looking at stains less than a week old. Though her findings could only prove that someone with type A blood had bled on Laura Hoteling's bedroom pillow, it was enough to turn the missing persons case into a potential homicide. Investigators needed to find out what had happened in Laura's room. Beneath the bedspread, they found something strange. There was a flat sheet on the bed, but the fitted sheet was gone. And on the mattress underneath were some faint stains that looked like more blood. Investigators saturated the mattress with a chemical called luminol. When it combines with blood proteins, even those invisible to the naked eye, it glows. Viewed in the dark, Laura's mattress radiated a pattern of blood spots and streaks that spelled murder.
There was a large quantity of blood that showed up on that bed. That's when we knew she had probably been murdered there in her bedroom.
The lack of spatter on the surrounding walls or furniture told detectives that the killer had used the pillow to staunch the blood flow. The absence of a blood trail leading from the bedroom suggested that the killer had either cleaned his tracks or wrapped the body before removing it from the house. Investigators collected fibers and samples of Laura's hair in case they ever had the need to make a comparison. Meantime, technicians searched the pillowcase for any link to the suspect. A crucial detail surfaced. Based on the repeated pattern of triangular smears